I have a bit of news to announce. You will be the first to hear this. You heard yesterday from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying that his country is open for business. It's country. I am happy to announce this morning that the 2018 Fortune Global Forum will be held in Canada. And all of you are invited. So we're very excited about this. Canada is home, has facilities for most of the Fortune Global 500. It has a very highly educated, diverse workforce, as the Prime Minister said yesterday. It is a beautiful place to visit, to work, so we hope you will all join us there. And with that, let me introduce back to the stage the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and Nancy Gibbs, the Group Editor of Time, Inc.
Well, that's very exciting news. This time last year, the Global Forum was at the Vatican with sessions with Pope Francis. We've had extraordinary hospitality this week and last night, a mind-blowing evening at the Sun Yat-sen Memorial. So in the spirit of can you top this, what can you promise this group about what they will see and hear and eat?
Yeah, I know, the Vatican, the extraordinary welcome we've had here. We're Canadian. We're happy to engage in a constructive, thoughtful way about the challenges the world is facing and offer our perspective and our solutions. I think one of the things that, these forums, I've been to a lot of various gatherings of extremely interesting, intelligent, engaged people over the past couple of years I've been Prime Minister. And one of the things that we see is we're all struggling with the same kinds of questions of the disruptions in the workplaces, challenges around trade that benefits our citizens, challenges around investments that benefit everyone. There are tensions around the world that having substantive conversations about from multiple different perspectives is actually not just important, but essential. One of the cores of Canada is that we believe that diversity is and must always be a source of strength. And it's not just diversity of backgrounds, it's diversity of points of view, of opinions, of solutions. And coming together and gathering the world at an important global forum like the Fortune Forum is an opportunity to highlight the positive aspects of the path forward and the solutions that Canada's busy putting forward.
So I'm eager to talk about some of the challenges you raised in your remarks yesterday. Let's start out with trade, which was a big focus, and moving geographically. NAFTA, what is the state of the talks, and where do you see that going?
NAFTA has been an extraordinarily successful trade deal over the past 25 years. It has created millions of good jobs for all three of the countries involved, Canada, US, and Mexico. 9 million at least jobs directly depend on NAFTA in the United States for trade with Canada. We know that after 25 years, any trade deal is going to need to be updated and renewed and new aspects brought into it, and we're excited about that. The negotiations any negotiations are going to be challenging. There's moments of advance and moments of greater challenges, but I remain fundamentally convinced that the positive impact that NAFTA has had, that trade has had on the United States, when I talk to governors, when I talk to members of Congress, when I talk to business leaders who recognize the kind of disruption a step away from NAFTA would be, it leaves me confident that we're going to continue to work in ways that benefit all of our citizens. The President, for all the positioning that he takes, he got elected on a commitment to help middle-class Americans do better when they felt that, quite frankly, maybe progress had passed them by. one of the powerful levers to do that is trade that works for them, is progressive trade deals, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve with NAFTA.
But your foreign affairs minister described the U.S. attitude as a winner-takes-all mindset. Do you feel that's still the case?
I think the current administration has perhaps different negotiating approaches than past administrations have had. But
You have a great future in diplomacy.
I think the issue fundamentally comes down to, are we going to be helping or hurting our citizens? And governments want to help their citizens, and I think canceling NAFTA, I think turning back the clock on really important measures that have benefited the United States and Canada and Mexico would harm our citizens, and I have to ultimately believe that that's not going to happen.
If the president were to follow through and withdraw, would you envision entering into bilateral talks?
We will always look at different opportunities. We're ready for anything when things come forward. I mean, the administration has shown a willingness to disrupt patterns of past behavior and look for new models. So we're willing to entertain next steps forward, but we're still very confident in the kinds of support and response that we've gotten from friends, partners, colleagues in the United States who recognize that trade is a powerful driver of growth and benefit to citizens.
So then moving east to TPP, there were headlines coming out of APEC of Canada sabotaging TPP. Did you feel that was an unfair characterization? And what's the status of CPTPP?
And let's take a step back first of all. I mean, we know that trade over the past 30 years at least has led to tremendous growth in the global economy. But there was a promise when we created and we moved forward with pro-growth strategies and policies. The promise was, we'll create growth and everyone will benefit from it. And what we've actually seen over the past decades in many places is that people are wondering when the benefits are going to reach them. Middle class is stalled in a lot of our Western countries, and people are starting to withdraw their support for pro-growth policies like trade, and that's where we get spikes in nationalism or protectionism. And I think it's really important for us to start not just making a case for trade, but demonstrating that trade can benefit ordinary citizens, workers, small businesses. And that's where, when we talk about more or modern trade deals, like the one we signed with the European Union. We just recently closed CETA, which is our free trade deal between Canada and the European Union. We brought in significant progressive elements, whether it's on protection of women, whether it's on and women entrepreneurs and women in business, whether it's environmental protections, whether it's ensuring a certain element of labor standards. These are the kinds of things that ensure that as we get growth, the benefits of that growth are broadly phrased. If we move forward with simply, straight and classic trade deals that focus all on tariffs and barriers and don't think about the impact it's going to have on citizens and communities and people, then we are going to find ourselves in a world where protectionism and inward thinking is the only option. So when we talk about making trade deals that work for everyone, it's not just a nice spin to put on modern trade deals. It's saying, no, we need to make sure we're benefiting our citizens. So when we engage in trade, whether it's trade talks with NAFTA, whether it was with the European Union, whether it's looking at the Canada-ASEAN free trade that we're working on, whether it's looking at what the TPP-11 or the CPTPP could look like, we're very positive about it, or even moving towards a comprehensive trade agreement with China. These are things that we're very enthusiastic about, but we're going to remain focused on not just the benefit for the multinationals and the country's bottom line, the benefit for ordinary citizens. And I think that's something that is an increased imperative everywhere around the world, including here in China, where what has been done over the past decades has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and into the global middle class.
But as you approach, you would be the first G7 country to do a bilateral trade deal with China. Are you concerned about the pushback domestically about whether a progressive trade deal with China is possible, given your position on human rights, on health, on environmental protections?
Every trade deal in the world is, by definition, between two different places with different approaches, different past, different stories, different kinds of governments, different politics. And there's always going to be a figuring out how to interface two different systems in a way that is mutually beneficial. And what Canadians expect is, as we engage with trade with anyone in the world, but particularly a country as significant and as much of a economic powerhouse as China has become, and is going to get even more so in the coming decades, they need to be reassured that the values and the interests and the jobs that Canadians hold dear are going to be compatible and fit in within that trade deal. And that's where, when we look at what the directions that China is moving in, for example, on environment. I mean, there is a recognition that making progress on the environment is very good for citizens, very good for the country, even though it's more of a progressive thing in certain labels. China has been a world leader on that. So there are ways of making sure in the negotiations that we're moving forward on a broad range of things that matter not just to Canadians, but to every citizen around the world.
You spoke yesterday about Canada's leading position in advanced technologies, in artificial intelligence, in robotics, and it raises the question about whether you see another kind of digital divide than the one we usually talk about, of not whether large numbers